Soweto under fire. The country's largest township had a dark cloud hovering over it. June 16, 1976, presented a new form of resistance towards the Afrikaans language policy introduced under the Bantu education in 1953 under the then apartheid government. It was under Bantu education that the then apartheid government spent 644 rands on a white child's education as opposed to a mere 42 rands on a black child's education. It was such inequalities, coupled with the Afrikaans language being enforced on black students, that led to a revolt. On that fateful day of June the 16th, what was supposed to be a peaceful protest by black students against the Afrikaans language policy turned ugly. Police fired at thousands of protesting students, killing 176 of them and leaving thousands injured. It was such inequalities fought by the youth and political movements that paved the way to a new political dawn in South Africa.
Right, a young man's thoughts. A little bit about the poet. 1956 was when he was born. He lives in Johannesburg. He had an interesting home life where his father was killed in a car accident when he was just a young boy. And his mother, who had eventually converted to Islam when she got married, converted back to Christianity. And this caused quite a big rift between his immediate family and his father's Muslim family. He is probably most famous for writing poetry in the 70s and 80s, but has not published much poetry before then or after then. So a little bit of historical background about the poem we're about to read. Obviously, you watched the little video clip that was in there. But essentially what happened is black students from Soweto protested against being taught in Afrikaans. And this came from the Afrikaans Medium Decree in 1974. And this forced all black schools or African schools to use Afrikaans and English in a 50-50 mix as the language of instructions. In 1972, there was a poll that found 98% of young Sowetans did not want to be taught in Afrikaans. And on the morning of June 16th in 1976, thousands of these students protested by leaving their schools and walking to the Orlando Stadium to protest against having to learn in Afrikaans. Many of these students who later participated in the protest arrived at school that morning without knowledge of the protest, but despite not knowing about it, they decided it was a worthwhile sort of scenario and cause for them, and they joined this protest. The protest was planned to be peaceful and had been carefully planned by the SSRC, but despite that, the apartheid police ended up creating a very, very unpeaceful situation. Teachers in Soweto even supported this march and emphasized that there was to be good discipline and kind of peaceful protests and actions that took place. The students began this march and only later found that the police had barricaded the road along the intended route. The leader of Action Committee asked the crowd not to provoke the police as they continued on another route to end up near Orlando High School. Now, this crowd was about 3,000 to 10,000 students, and they were making their way towards the school. And the violence escalated when police fired at them, and they began to throw bottles and kind of do whatever they need to do to protect themselves. And by nightfall, the police had escalated everything and were in bottle stores and beer halls, kind of arresting and taking violence to the people of Soweto. And by nightfall that evening, the violence only really kind of stopped. Police vans and armored vehicles patrolled the streets throughout the night. There had to be emergency clinics set up because of all the injuries sustained by the children who were wounded by the police. No one really knows how many bullet wounds were were kind of found on these children, as doctors refused to collect the details because the police might want to target them. And especially after this June 16th event, there was extremely high emotions and hostility between the police and the students from then. About 200 to 600 people died during this kind of protest gone wrong.
The law of the country was that we're not allowed to take pictures of anything that the police have done. So I knew I was risking my life. The last picture that I took with this camera is for Hector Peters in June 16, 1976.
Growing up, even though we heard about apartheid, it did not make sense to us because we are based in Soweto and there is no white person in Soweto. The only white person that you'd see would be superintendent, police. So it did not really understand what apartheid is. About 1976, we were told that subjects are going to be taught in Afrikaans.
Okkie is diep in gedagte terwyl hy hankend aanstap skool toe.
So we felt like the very same subject that we are struggling with English, we are going to do in Afrikaans. This doesn't make sense.
For many years, blacks were learning English, but when they say that now you must try to learn everything in Afrikaans, it was difficult for the students.
We preferred to be taught in English because we felt like English is the international language. To us it was like, okay, now our oppressors think that whatever they want to say to us we will do because we are afraid of them. So we just decided that we are really going to demonstrate.
Some students leaked the information to the world newspaper. They told us tomorrow is going to be students protesting against Afrikaans.
On the 16th of June in 1976, we were so excited. It was like we were going on a school trip.
To them it was just a joyful march.
The singing, the chanting, we felt free.
Surprisingly, the whole of Soweto came together to march. About 10,000 students. As I was marching with the students, I drifted away from them because I didn't know how it was going to happen. But I knew they would be arrested or even shot by the police.
Police barricaded some of the street. So our leaders told us that other schools are on the way.
The student leader climbed on top of the tree telling them that this is a peaceful march. I was between the police and the students. And I put my armband, which has got written press here, so that the police must identify me as a journalist, not a student.
While waiting for these other students, all of a sudden, there was a shot.
All the police were just shooting at random. So the students scattered. I think what provoked the police is that they sang the song which was banned in South Africa, Sigelela, which today is a national anthem.
We all ran amok in confusion, running for cover. I didn't even think of my brother would be in that because we were told that only secondary and high schools were to take part. Then I spotted my younger brother on the opposite side of the pavement. He was too young to understand what was really going on. I just said to him, no, you must just stay here next to me. I'll make sure I find a way back home. While I was talking to him, there was another shot, and we went two separate ways.
I was very close from where the police were shooting. And I saw a person fell down, but I did not expect to see a 13-year-old boy being shot by the police.
As I sneaked back to the pavement, he was nowhere to be seen.
When I took that picture, Boiso Makuba picked him up to get Hector Peters into the clinic.
So I quickly ran to the scene. I was trying to explain myself. This is my younger brother. Where are you taking him? The man never said anything. And I looked at my brother. I saw blood coming from the side of the mouth. As he was about to put my brother in the car, he said, "He's dead."
What started as a peaceful protest degenerated into a rampage and later exploded into a bloody conflagration.
Soweto was on fire. No journalist was sleeping on that night until the following day.
There was a cloud of smoke all over Soweto. Burnt houses, buses, it was tense.
I knew that the police would force me to open all my cameras. So I removed the film quickly and I stuck it on my sock. When the police opened all my cameras, all the films were exposed except the pictures I took of Hector Peterson. There was a big debate up at the World newspaper. The editor thought we must not use this picture because this picture is going to spark civil war in South Africa. But eventually, the editor of the World newspaper decided that no, come what may, we must use this picture. The police came to the office of the World newspaper. They weren't happy they were exposing what the government was doing. Of course, the picture was banned in South Africa. I did not know that it was going to have such a big impact.
When my brother Mbuisa came back to the house, maybe it was around 9:10 at night, he was hurt, he was confused. He felt bad that Hector died. His intention was to save him. We had to keep on telling him that, look, when a person has to die, they have to die. It's not your fault. But it just changed from that day. He was no longer the Musa that we knew. I think it did something to him that we never understood, and he never shared it with us. The police didn't like that picture. The police said he was posing to show the world what was happening in our country. He couldn't stay at home because if they had found him, they would have arrested him. I think after that he was kind of mentally disturbed.
He was being hunted by the police. That's why he escaped from the country and he went to exile. Up to now, nobody knows his whereabouts. The police also came to me to find out why I take this picture. I told them I was assigned to do this job. And then he said, Sam, choose between your job and your life. Now we are being given a final assignment that we must not arrest you, we must just shoot at you. That's the thing that made me leave the job from the World newspaper. I found that Johannesburg was no longer good for me. To be a journalist no longer good for me. So I came here at Lilydale, my hideout place, where I am now. I was on house arrest about a year and 7 months. During that time, I resigned from the World newspaper. Then after that, they didn't even say that the sentence is over. They just disappeared. For many years, I regretted taking the picture of Hector Peterson because the picture destroyed my future in journalism. But I'm no longer regretting it because Mandela, when he was unveiling Hector Peterson Memorial, he said, when we saw this picture, we said, enough is enough. After so many years, people are free in South Africa, and that is really giving me consolation.
In the name of peace, democracy and freedom for all.
When I look at the picture, I cannot remove myself from what happened on the day. But the photo itself, it did not only change our lives as such, but it was a turning point for all South Africans. It did not matter the color.
The photo gives us more and more sadness every day because my brother just disappeared off the face of the earth. After all these years, I realized that it's not just a picture, it's something quite big. It did something good for the country.
We buried my brother on the 3rd of July. The hardest part of it was, why did police open fire? It really did not make sense. Because as we were students, we never had weapons. The photo itself tells it all. Even the youngest were there, they felt like being oppressed is not okay. Look at what happened. Even the youngest was killed. So to me, the picture reflects all those families who had similar incidents, because I know that we were not the only ones.
I realized that when you want to get something, you must work hard for it. You know, this freedom, the youth of South Africa, they don't value it because they found everything that's been done for them. There are quite a lot of people who died because they wanted to show that we are not supporting the apartheid in the country.
The Hector Peterson Museum, it's a place of reconciliation. Those who died made us live better today. And as for my brother, I know that he did not die in vain.
The picture changed South African apartheid because they felt that this is enough.
Let's have a read through the poem, A Young Man's Thoughts Before June 16th. Tomorrow I travel on a road that winds up to the top of a hill. I take with me only the sweet memories of my youth. My heart aches for my mother, for Friday nights with friends, around a table with a broad belch of beer. I ask only for a sad song, sung by a woman with downturned eyes, and strummed by an old man with a broken brow. I sing my sad song, sing for me, for my sunset is drenched with red. Right, so the title of that poem, June 16th, obviously that's the day in 1976 when many Sowetan black children protested and were shot by apartheid police. The summary of the poem, if we have a look at it, the poet places himself in the shoes of one of the teenagers who took part in the Soweto uprising on June the 16th in 1976, and this is obviously a tragic day, and he foresees the tragedy that is about to take place. The portrayal that he kind of gives is very casual, it's happy-go-lucky, it's innocent, and it doesn't really show the severity of the brutality that was about to happen. The poet is really preparing for his death the following day, and which would obviously be the June 16th. And we know this because the top of the hill suggests the suffering and self-sacrifice that he makes. He will take with him to the streets armed only with the memories of his childhood. So he's not going there with guns and weapons and everything you would expect in a sort of brutal protest. But all he goes with him is his memories, the memory of his mother and the joy that he had with his friends, drinking beer and having fun. And at the end of this, he really only asks for one thing, and this is that before the new day, a sad song would be played by two sad people, a woman and an old man, because he wants to be mourned and he wants to be remembered. He expects that the sunset the next day will to be drenched with red, and this shows the bloodshed of those who are about to die. Let's have a look at lines 1 to 4. Now, tomorrow I travel on a road that winds to the top of the hill. I take with me only the sweet memories of my youth. So obviously this is the day before the Soweto uprising. He's busy preparing himself for the possible tragedy that is about to occur. So when we look at the idea that he's traveling on a road, he kind of looks to tomorrow, as tomorrow would be the day that the protest takes place. Tomorrow would be June the 16th. The uncapitalized I obviously suggests the student's insignificant in when relating to the kind of severity of the scenario that they are facing, and this as compared to improving education for all non-white schoolgoers, he accepts that he is insignificant by comparison to what they hope to achieve. The student will travel on a road, and this suggests that this is a metaphor for life or being on a journey. When he winds up to the top of the hill, obviously we know a journey that he goes on will be difficult because of the reality he gets to the top of the hill, and this is also suggested by the word wind, or not wind, winds up to the top of the hill, and obviously suggesting that he requires determination and persistence to navigate this winding uphill kind of road that he goes on. The student's life is aimed at achieving a specific goal, and obviously this is the improvement of non-white education. I take with me only the sweet memories of my youth. What is he going with him? Nothing except the memories of his youth, that all he has for comfort on this winding uphill road. And these memories are clearly important to the speaker, which emphasizes the importance of the human aspects of the protest rather than the political. So this idea that it's not only just about him as a person, it's about what this kind of means for all of the people that are affected by it. My heart aches for my mother, for Friday nights with friends around a table with a broad belch of beer. The speaker kind of now shows how he longs for the carefree days. He misses his mother and hanging out with his friends. Now, in line 5, we can see how he realizes the heartache and grief this death will bring for his mother. He says, my heart aches for my mother. And line 6, we start to see how he longs for this time where it was simpler, where there was just a social kind of presence and bonds he gets to share with his friends. And he recollects a simple instance or a simple scenario where he was with his friends and he gets to have an enjoyable time with them, belching, burping, and drinking beer and having fun with his friends. In line 8 to 11, where he says, I ask for a sad song sung by a woman with downturned eyes and strummed by an old man with a broken brow. Now we start to see that the speaker really, at the end of this, he is predicting that obviously there will be a tragedy, and he wants to be remembered in a sad song about the suffering that will take place. There's obviously alliteration in this line with broken brow, sing my sad song for me, and this adds to a sort of lyrical musical rhythm. The metonymy and old man's broken brow, that references suffering, sadness, grief to an extent, and the metaphor broken brow obviously compares to something being fragile, how his brow is broken in a frown, that he is upset. Now, why does he really ask for these things? The reality is this is about remembrance, that he wants to be mourned by a song. And this suggests that he wishes his friends and family not grieve for too long only over his passing, that it's just by a sad song and then it be done. The woman to sing for him would obviously, we assume, to be his mother. She would have downturned eyes. This could be a way to either hide her grief or a sign of submission to the oppressor, which would be the apartheid government and police. In line 10, we see this idea of the strummed by an old man with a broken brow. The student would also have to have an old man, assumedly his father, but we don't really know, to grieve by the means of the song. This man's broken brow suggests the physical scarring that suggests his brow would be furrowed, that he'd be weeping and crying from the emotion experiences of mourning the tragedy of their son's death. This is obviously highlighted by the fact that it could also represent the broken brow of the oppression that they've suffered under apartheid. In line 12 to 13, oh, sing my sad song, sing for me, for my sunset is drenched with red. Now, the speaker obviously highlights the fact that he probably won't be around the following day, as we start to see that this is the final sunset covered by the blood of youth. The metaphor there, sun is drenched. This is compared to something that's soaked. Obviously, we get this image of it being soaked in red blood, which is harsh. It's a cruel, it's a violent image that we start to see. The red represents bloodshed and the young man's death, and that's obviously through the use of metonymy. Oh, sing my sad song, sing for me, for my sunset is drenched with red. This obviously represents that the student has asked the others to sing for him, which may suggest that he's already dead and cannot sing for himself. He describes that at the end of his life, where the sunset happens. We have the cyclical kind of idea of a day, that when you reach sunset, it will be the end of the day and the end of his life. The red signifies passion, blood, violence, anger, all of these things that would have occurred during this protest. And Drent suggests that he has this complete hopelessness of escaping the violence and bloodshed that will take place on June the 16th during the Soweto uprising. It also adds the image of blood, and this suggests a large number of people died during this protest. Now, the theme really outlines a young man's song about life and underlines the courage of all who participated in this uprising of June the 16th. Right, and that's the poem. It's a pretty moving poem. It's a pretty hectic poem, and it is one that we need to always kind of keep with us as we start to analyze and work with all that we have now and all that is still to come, and not forget all of those who have kind of suffered for the privileges that everyone around us gets to experience. Despite the fact that there is still much to achieve, this is one of the moments where people can feel very, very proud of what they did achieve despite the tragedy that took place, because this ends up being quite a catalyst for change in South African times.